celebrating our 20th season. From the college by the lake, meeting the personalities and discussing the issues that affect all of Coeur d'Alene and the inland Northwest. We are the North Idaho College Public Forum. And now, here's your host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart.
We're very pleased to start today a 6-week series entitled The Great Mysteries of Our Time. Recently at North Idaho College, the Popcorn Forum did this series, and we are having those guests on this program for the next 6 weeks. We would like to start out the first week with our guest, Lauren Coleman, who is the research consultant at the Human Services Development Institute at the University of Southern Maine. He works for the Edmund Muskie Institute at that same university. He is with us today to discuss mysterious places and events in the United States, and he was the kickoff keynote speaker at this symposium on the great mysteries of our time. Our guest is well recognized in a number of fields. He is an author. He has written or co-authored 8 books. He is recognized as an expert in cryptozoology, and he lectures on this subject around the United States, and he has been very kind with his time to be with us, to speak to our community and to be on this program. One of his really well-known books is entitled Mysterious America, and he's co-authored such books as The Unidentified and Creatures of the Outer Edge. He recently was on NBC TV show Unsolved Mysteries. Mr. Coleman, welcome to our program. We're so happy to have you here today to discuss this mysterious topic.
Oh, I'm glad to be here, Tony.
And I'm very pleased to have 3 panel members today to join in the questioning of our guest. To my immediate left is Janelle Burke, who is an attorney in the state of Idaho, and next to her is Steve Schink, who is Dean of College Relations and Development at North Idaho College, and then Jim McLeod, who's from the Department of English and has really been a great supporter of this program over the years and has helped with grant writing for our program. Welcome to the panel, and I shall ask Janelle Burke to commence the questioning.
Lauren, to help our viewers understand a little bit about you, get to know you, can you tell us how did you get interested in this subject? Were you always interested in it, or was it something that developed over time?
Always is a long time, but it did start when I was very young. I was 12 years old. I was very interested in history in the United States and was watching a movie on the abominable snowman of the Himalayas, and went to my teachers at school and said, you know, why aren't we learning about the Yeti, and what is all of this business about these animals that are undiscovered? And what shocked me and made me more curious was that nobody in school, none of the textbooks were talking about these things. So it just was a door that opened for me into an incredible amount of information that was really excluded from the teaching that was going on. And so I got interested. I started corresponding with a scientist named Ivan Sanderson in 1962, and got more and more involved and did my first writings in '69, and it's just been, you know.
Well, we're going to talk about some events
Sure.
and some places that are mysterious and unusual. Can you tell us what are some of these events that are mysterious, and then what are some of the places, kind of identify what areas we'd be talking about?
Right. Well, in cryptozoology, which is the study of unknown hidden animals that have not been discovered and are not zoologically classified yet, there's things like the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot and Yeti that everybody knows, and so I do investigate those. In the United States, Bigfoot, Sasquatch is very well known, but in the southern part of the United States, there's little chimp-like creatures that are often called the skunk ape or the swamp ape, and a lot of people have seen those. There's such weird things as alligators showing up out of nowhere, and one of the people that I'm a student of is Charles Fort, who was an intellectual in the 1920s, and he actually invented the word teleportation to explain some of this, and you know, as if that's an explanation. But
And what does teleportation mean?
Teleportation is the sort of mysterious transporting of one object from one place to another, and I think we all know Star Trek, where everybody gets beamed up, and that's teleportation. It's a process that's not explainable yet, but it seems to happen. Creatures mysteriously appear for a couple weeks and then they disappear. People find alligators and armadillos in unusual places. So those are some of the events. UFO stories and things like that are things that other people in my field are more interested in.
What about places that these things happen?
Well, in my books, Mysterious America, and also the book that came after that, which is called Curious Encounters, I really tried to start looking at the patterns on the land in certain names and different things like that. And I found that, for instance, the word Fayette, which is a French word that means little fairy or little enchantment, if you look at the 18 counties and the 28 cities around the United States, there seems to be almost a harmonic magnetism with those names, and you have strange reports of Black Panthers, of UFOs, of disappearances, of ghosts, of haunted houses that are concentrated on certain points on the land. Also, I've investigated things like the mystery walls of the southern Illinois area or Berkeley, California, that are pre-Columbian, and we really don't know who built those. So there's all kinds of things across the land that are interesting to me.
Steve Sheen.
Lauren, your day job, if I can put it in
the one that pays the rent.
That's
right?
exactly the one I'm talking about, is at a university in Maine.
Right.
How would you characterize the other work that you do? Is that an avocation? Is it a hobby? Or is it a science and a part-time job?
It's certainly my life's passion, and it's almost because of that. I was a writer and a researcher before I've spent the last 10 years at the university where I'm a research associate, so my life is really merged, even though on my day job I investigate teen suicide or adoptions or elder fire deaths. Those are still mysteries to me. You know, why are they not solvable? Why aren't they preventable, as opposed to UFOs or Bigfoots or things like that? Looking for answers, and so the combination and the intermingling is there for me. And so I'm certainly involved in almost the same kind of track now in my life.
Unfortunately, most of us, the contact we have with unexplained phenomena is probably limited to the checkout stand at the grocery store.
Well, that's the unfortunate contact.
Talk about that for a little bit, if you will. Is there an element out there of people who are not legitimate scientists, who are doing poor research, and who give your work a bad name, or is there a good body of people at work, but what they find, what they discover, is distorted in headlines in tabloids in the grocery store?
I think that always happens. There's always a fringe element. There's serious researchers, there's buffs, and there's general people that are interested in it. And I'm really not negative to those people that even have a mild interest in this, because I think any curiosity is very good in the United States. We shouldn't believe what comes along. I basically don't believe in anything. I accept that there's real people having real experiences, and I don't explain those experiences. I report, I do journalistic investigations. I believe that 80% of all of these reports are misidentifications, hoaxes, and mistakes. And there's a hardcore of 20% that are unknowns. Just because the World Weekly News or the National Enquirer decides to write about something, that doesn't make me any less wondering of what's going on out there.
Is there any organization that credits is probably a bad term, but that maybe polices the research that's done into unexplained phenomena to ensure the kinds of things that you're talking about, that some measure of science is being applied to the study?
Well, I think you may be thinking of the Cyclops group, which is the rational thinkers that really, I think, go the other way and don't believe any of it and really dispute all of the things that are going on, as well as maybe the fringe on the other end, which are the true believers that there's people being abducted in UFOs every other day. There's a group of people in between the International Fortean Organization, the Society for the Investigation of the Unexplained, and some Fortean groups in England that are, and as well as the International Cryptozoological Society, which are made up of scientists, university people, more scholarly individuals that are interested in just keeping an open mind and a kind of a healthy skepticism, as opposed to these extremes, which I really don't get involved with.
Jim McLeod.
Lauren, I'd like to follow up a little bit on that idea of curiosity. And,
Sure.
I'd like you to comment, if you would, on how you see the role of curiosity in research and in education. What role does that play in an educated person?
Well, I teach one class, for instance, at the university in documentary film, and I bring the same kind of philosophy to that. I believe that we should really respect people thinking, questioning. Charles Fort said that he really was in pursuit of the damned, and by the damned he meant everything that was excluded from science. And in my whole work, whether it's in human service work or cryptozoology or unexplained phenomena, I really try to expand people's horizons so they won't really believe what they read in the newspaper or hear on the 6 o'clock news, that they'll look beyond that and start questioning what's going on in the stories and go back to original sources and things like that, as opposed to just reading something and believing everything.
How typical do you think you are in terms of being an academic by day and a researcher of mysterious things at night, if I could put it that way?
Well, besides yourself, I haven't met too many other people. No, it's a rare phenomenon, although it is interesting, I think, that in any academic situation, there's a lot more free thinking than even if I go into the business community or even some mental health friends of mine who are very closed. But then, I mean, I have friends that study UFOs, and they're very close to some other open-minded things that I'm interested in. So, you know, it happens even in our field. But
how well are you received by your own colleagues and peers in this?
Well,
this
I've been doing
situation?
this now for 30-some years, so I'm very hardened to ridicule and understand that often comes out of people's own fear of the unknown, that they do not realize that there may be things that they don't know about, and it's very scary for people to not have all the answers. So I've kind of softened my own stance in response to that ridicule.
I introduced you by indicating that one of your books was Mysterious America, and there's
Right.
some rather intriguing terms in there, and I want to give you an opportunity with our viewers to tell us about some of those and identify them. One of them is Route 66, Blue Phantom. Would you tell us what that is?
Well, in 1952, up and down Route 66 in Illinois over into Missouri, there was an incredible number of reports of this phantom blue car going around shooting at people. And it was one of these strange snipings where no one was hurt. There was cracks in windshields, and so in the press there it became known as the Blue Phantom. In the book Mysterious America, I look at the strange collection of things that happen around the number 33 and 66, and so Route 66 Blue Phantom was an illustration of that.
The second one is called Things That Go Bump in the Bay State.
Right. Well, in Massachusetts, there's an area called the Bridgewater Triangle, and so I looked at the giant snake reports and the creatures in the Hockomock Swamp. And by the way, Hockomock is one of those special words that it's interesting. There's a lot of collection of strange phenomena there, and the Westerners, the Europeans that have come over, call it the Hockomock Swamp, but Hockomock is an Algonquin Indian word for the devil, and it's almost as if the native peoples before knew that was a strange place, and so the Europeans are just reduplicating that knowledge.
And the third one I'd like for you to identify is Kelly's Little Men.
Well, in 1955, the whole phrase "little green men" comes from an incident in Kelly, Kentucky, where these people were attacked over a 48-hour period by these shining, glowing little creatures that would pull their hair. They would stand on top of the house and pull the hair of the people, and there was incredible shotgun exchange, and these little creatures would just roll over and kind of bounce back into the woods and then come back and visit. So the Kelly creatures is a well-documented story that unfortunately has been kept too much in the UFO lore. Even though no UFOs were seen, it's much more a cryptozoological kind of unexplained story to me.
Janelle Bird.
Well, let's go on with these experiences that you encounter in your book.
Sure.
How about the Jersey Devil?
The Jersey Devil is an illustration of how a collection of different creatures, from flying orange horses to winged pterodactyl-like creatures to Bigfoot-type creatures, can be in a specific location, the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, and the locals will label all of them one thing, the Jersey Devil. That happens a lot in lake monster reports in Quebec, for instance. A lake can have 3 or 4 different kinds of unexplainables, but it's labeled all one type of lake monster.
Who's Champ?
Champ is the lake monster of Lake Champlain. They call him Champ or Champy up there.
Now, would you just walk us through a call? Suppose you got a
call?
call
Oh,
from
okay.
someone and they said, I think I saw Sasquatch, or I think I saw Champ, or whatever, or the big snake. Walk us through a call. What would you do then?
Well, I have two types of backgrounds. One is in anthropology and zoology, and the other is in psychiatric social work. So part of what starts for me in terms of investigation is in the interview. I do almost like a psychological profile of the person. Are they trying to pull my leg? Are they trying to hoax me? What is it in it for them? Oftentimes, the ones that I listen to the most are the people that come to me and say, I don't really want to talk about this, but I need to talk about it with someone. And or through a friend, I've heard somebody that's resistant to talking but has seen something, because it's a very, people have lost jobs from being mentioned in newspapers or books, and it's just very scary to be out there in the world having seen a monster. So it starts there with the people. Then I go to the site and I look at the evidence, and I'm very interested in what I call the tangible intangibles. Is there footprints? Have there been cattle killings or livestock deprivations? Is there any evidence that actually I can put my fingers on or send to a lab? And then I, back up and look at the more amorphous evidence and see if there's anything there.
Do people ever say to you, I'm not sure I saw it? Or are they always sure? By the time they get to you, they're always sure.
Well, what I usually do, it's not so much that people come to me. I usually go out into a certain area or hear about a report in an area, and then I kind of start fanning out and talk to local people, or just kind of blanket an area, and that's when I start hearing these marginal reports of, I saw this black flash on the road, and I put that together with somebody else that has seen a definite black panther, and kind of do a framework in which all these reports, it's really a continuum, and you have very good reports to the very poor reports, and hoaxes are in there someplace, and you throw those out.
Steve Sheen.
Lauren, you said earlier that you're hardened to skeptics and to ridicule in this business.
No, I said ridicule, not skeptics. Skeptics are really different to me.
Okay. I wonder if there isn't a sort of a counterbalancing phenomenon. Is there a desire on the part of many people to believe in these mysteries, even in the face of evidence that would refute them? And I'm thinking specifically of the crop circle mysteries in England, where people came forward and said, this is a hoax, and this is how we did it. And
you mean the two guys that were drinking at the tavern?
I haven't
Those
met-
were the hoaxers.
Is that right?
Their hoax was a hoax. And
Has that already been
that's
admitted?
been looked into. There's been 10,000 reports of crop circles, and I'm not saying I believe in them, but the rational Western mind is excited by these reports for a while, but then they need to have them explained. And if it doesn't happen, the newspaper or the media or these people that call themselves skeptics, which I have some doubt that they are, they're just rational thinkers, have to quickly bury the evidence, have to quickly explain it. And so when these two men who have had too much ale and talked too much and wanted some press and media attention came forward and said, we've been doing this for years and we came up with this idea, everybody jumped on that, and we haven't heard that much about crop circles. I think it's a natural phenomenon, by the way, and not really that mysterious, but certainly it's not two guys that have gone around from Scotland to Australia to the northern plains of America and done these crop circles. These guys just don't have that kind of funding.
As someone with a background in psychology and sociology, is there something that the human spirit needs in these events? Do we enjoy the mystery and the unexplained and the sort of the fear element involved in some of these things?
I don't know if it's the fear element. I mean, being in human services, I've been very disturbed by the increasing need to put more and more violence in movies, for instance. And I think that we've gone from a culture in the 40s that were sort of interested in some UFO reports that were just lights in the sky, to now through the close encounters, and now we're getting into abductions and experiments. So you can really see, I look at a real cultural framework in all of these mysteries and all of these reports. What is the culture doing to the reports? You have fairies in the 17th century, and then you have demons, and then you have UFO occupants, and now abducting of people in very scary situations. So it really has to be looked through the cultural screen. And people are needing more and more excitement and violence in our culture, and this is being reflected in the reports, unfortunately.
Joe McLeod.
I'd just like to come back to a couple of things.
Sure.
One, there's a sense in which, I think this is a question, Warren. There's a sense in which I feel that even if some of these reports are, aberration of the mind or something, you look at something like 15,000 articles have been published on UFOs alone. Mm-hmm. What is it out there that, even if people are completely deluded by all these things, the fact that people are seeing these things, reporting these things in various parts of the world, different parts of the country, and so on, I think in and of itself, isn't that a valid area of study then, just to think about why these people do these sorts of things?
Right. Well, 2 points you've sort of brought up in my mind. One, yes, it's important to study the phenomena of the myths, of the modern folklore, the modern legend, and respect that they are really a reflection of our culture, and we should study them for that. And also, I do believe, cryptozoologically at least, that if you look at the way animals have been discovered, it usually starts through native people's reports, and they're usually very elaborate and somewhat exaggerated. But if you look beneath that smoke, there's usually a kernel of truth, so that the giant panda and the coelacanth and the gorilla were all exaggerated some way, but they were discovered, and they're new to Western man. They're really within the last 100 years that we've discovered an incredible number of animals. So despite what I've said about psychology, I really want to retain the fact that in my continuum, even though I know a lot of these are delusions and hoaxes, I think some of them actually may be reporting new animals as well. I'm not sure, and I'm not sure we really know what UFOs are. What is it that's coming through our psyche and being explained different ways?
The other thing I wanted to come back to is that point you were making about people being reluctant to talk about these things. I know in my own case, I had two students here at North Idaho College who came to me after I spoke about, one was about phantoms and the other was about a phantom train. The one who came to me about the phantom indicated that she was terrified by the experience, and she didn't want me to talk about this in class anymore. She was extremely upset. The other student who came to me about the phantom train was not so upset about it, but did spend some time with me explaining what she'd seen and what had occurred. Is that the sort of thing that you encounter frequently too? People coming to you in confidence and trying to tell you about something that they experienced?
Their experience of people usually is that it's either laughed off, or you were drinking or smoking marijuana or something, and they need to have someone that they can reality check with, that there's other people out there that have seen something similar to you, and maybe we don't have the answers about what it is, but your experience was a very real one, and we should respect you for that. It's almost like Anita Hill, I mean, in some ways, she had a very real experience, and the country debated what was going on, but we should respect that person for having that experience and coming forward and telling us about it.
Your areas of study are just so comprehensive, and Lauren, I had the advantage of being able to talk with you prior to this program. And I have a question that I think will lead us into another area of investigation that you're doing. If you were to be asked what you think is the greatest mystery in our country today, what would your answer be?
Well, I believe the greatest mystery in our country right now is the JFK assassination, and that we should really acknowledge that this country has been different since 1963, and that if we can go back and investigate that and come up with some more answers, I think all of this other stuff about UFOs or elections or is window dressing, is really distraction from that big mystery. Who killed JFK, how was it done, and why was it done? Oliver Stone may be criticized for the sensational nature of his movie, but he's brought to the public debate what I believe is the greatest mystery of right now.
If we go back and look at that earlier investigations, the Warren Commission that was done rather rapidly after the assassination, and then later the United States House of Representatives investigation, both of President Kennedy and Dr. King, the conclusion of those two investigations were quite different, were they not? I mean, the House left the door open more, that they weren't convinced that there was a lone assassin.
Yes and no. It reminds me of what Stephen was asking me about in terms of the American public had a traumatic experience, and they needed to be reassured that their leaders had all the answers. It's just like what happens when somebody has a UFO or Bigfoot experience and the media has decided they're the parents. So the Warren Commission very quickly said it was the lone assassin. I think that if you look at different parts of the House Select Committee, what they were really for, and also if you look at what happened in Iran-Contra, most of these legislative bodies are there to reassure the public that they know what's going on, that all of the answers are shelved, and because what the House Select Committee essentially said is, Lee Harvey Oswald did it, he may have had help, but we're not sure. And that's happened over and over again. In Iran-Contra, they didn't talk about the drug money that was going there, the drugs that were being brought back and forth into the country. They didn't talk about the camps that have been set up in this country for dissidents. Every time these new issues would come up in Iran-Contra, they were closed down. Every time a new issue would come up in any of the assassination, the secret team business, that was all closed down. So it happens in our country regularly, and what's happening, of course, right now is that I think worldwide, globally, we're being shaken up, and we're in a very, I think, exciting time for people that like to ask questions.
Almost 30 years has passed since the assassination of
Right.
President Kennedy, and there was such a shock at the time, and you're saying almost looking for an immediate answer. But now that time's passed, and over 75% of the people in the latest poll I saw, they do not believe the Warren Commission report.
Right.
Now that so much time has passed, is it a better chance that more investigations will take place? I know that you have been particularly interested in looking at what happened to a number of people following the assassination that were somehow witnesses to
Right.
the episode.
I'm going from here to give another presentation in Chicago on the Kennedy assassination, and a particular area of my interest in human services has been suicides, and I think that even saying that word, people immediately want to back away from it. And in terms of the large number of witnesses and accessories to the assassination that have been quote-unquote suicides, immediately forestalls any investigation of what really happened. So I'm interested in that aspect of it.
Lauren, on behalf of our panel and our staff, we thank you for being with us today. Lauren Coleman has been our guest, and it's been most informative. And ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite you to be with us again next week when we will do part 2 of this 6-part series. Our subject next week is going to be UFOs, and then we'll continue with other subjects in future weeks. And I hope you'll be able to be with us each of these programs over this 6-week period. Until next week, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum was videotaped live from the studios of Telemedia Services on the campus of North Idaho College for viewing at this more appropriate time. We invite you to join us again next week for another all-new edition of the North Idaho College Public Forum on this public television station.